Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Watercolor Instructions with me, Sunil. So today we're going to attempt doing English village scene. So it's somewhere in Suffolk Coast. I can't remember the name of the village. There is a little bit of old Victorian houses. There's a little bit of marina. There's steps. There's a little bit of beach, and obviously it adds a little more drama to add a couple of people. And you can see there's birds. Grey cloud, very typical UK weather. This one requires a little more drawing, not complicated. Don't worry about the subject. I'll break it down into how to do simple drawing, attempt it, and finish this painting. So stick around. Okay, so let's start with a horizon line. So this is a 6B pencil. It's just a soft pencil, even though it looks a lot darker just for the painting, but it's a lot more gentle. When you paint, you can hardly notice it. So I'm going to start with some cliff or the edge of the, what do you call that? The building or the path. And I'm just drawing a couple of houses. So as you see, even though drawing has some shapes in this one, but there's nothing very complicated in terms of the drawing skills needed. It's a lot more simpler, and when you look at it, the way I hold my pencil, it's very loose. So there is a couple of houses in the front, and just don't forget to add some of the details like the chimneys, and I'm paying attention so that it is 3 dimensions, so that I know which side is the light and which side is the shadow. So that's where there's one of the houses. There's a house just behind that. On the chimney. So multiple houses. And I'm just slowly filling in the area. Or I'm just starting. A good tip is to draw the house or a point of view, what's most important, and then you slowly start filling in from there. So a little bit of steps where it should come in, and simple boat shapes just to with very little detail, just to show that that's a boat and that's a sail. There's a couple of houses in the background. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 boats, and you go from there. And not to forget, a couple of people. So make sure the eye line. See where I draw the head, and I'm going to try to keep all the heads in the same eye line. So there's a couple of them. The body is slightly bigger. That means the people are slightly in the front, and there's a couple more people, and there's a smaller person so very basic reference, so you know that's where the shadow is, that's where the people are standing, and a few more features like a door, a little more chimney, and then I will tackle everything else in the painting in itself. So because this one is just capturing the mood, this is not an illustration, or it's not one of the architectural sketch where it's very precise and true to perspective. This is still true to perspective, but not as much as you think it is. So I'm picking up cobalt blue, and there's some leftover gray and other unfinished colors in the palette. So cobalt blue, it has a tint of green. You think the green might spoil the cloud, but it will work. So I'm just using a mop brush. My hands in the way, apologies. And we paint. I'm just paying attention to leave the whites of the building. And if you notice in the palette, I didn't mix the colors really well, because I don't want completely mixed. So if you see the top right, it has blues and there's a little more grays. So I'm adding grays, I'm picking up grays from the palette, and I'm just adding a few more details. Not being super precise, but also not being too shabby about it. So intentionally I'm leaving some gaps in between. This is fresh cobalt from the palette. And very little water. So that's the background. And I'm picking up another brush. I'm taking some burnt sienna for the roof. Fresh burnt sienna, so it's true pigment color. So some Algerian red. So it has some Algerian red and then burnt sienna mixed from the previous palette. I'm just using some shade of terracotta or red color. So I'm taking some burnt umber, a little gray. That's the shadow. Making sure there's a shadow and there's a light side and the dark side. Those subtle features where it captures light gives the depth to the painting. So a few windows, a little bit of shadow under the roof. Just a suggestion. So I'm thinking sometimes if I'm hesitating to paint, it's because I'm thinking the colors. It's an important part of the process. Don't rush till you're fairly certain what you want to do. Take your time. You want to test the colors. Have a piece of paper. You can get the colors in. First check the colors. So I'm always trying to paint the colors in the same family. Even though there is a lot darker pigment, it's still warm colors. So the sky is cool color and all the buildings are warm colors. So I'm just trying to think in terms of a group of warm and cool colors. Bit of shadow. So again, I like these Japanese calligraphy brushes. Just there's so much control. The Mops, depending on the practice, you can do most of the things what a calligraphy brush can do. But for a beginner, I feel a calligraphy brush has a better control than a Mop. Recently, I've been a big fan of using more and more calligraphy brush. They are just fun to paint with. They hold a lot of pigment and nice to paint with. So a little more dark. So a dark shadow. By adding a dark contrasting shadow, everything else becomes a lot more light and loose. See how the house and other things, they pop up automatically because there's such a strong color. little bit of shadow of the house. Slowly building while that other area is drying. So I'm getting onto the house in the background. Not much details, slightly lighter color. Always pay attention, the foreground needs to be darker in most of the cases, depends on case to case, but there's a lot lighter in the background so that you get that depth. So I'm adding a little more gray shadows to the house, and now I'm getting to the edge of the ocean or the marina. See how the 6B pencil, even though it looks a lot darker, easily disappears. And just like that you can do the steps. So the eyes will fit in the description, so it's easily, you know. So I'm doing a lot of rough edges. I don't want to be painting all flat or with lots of pigment. See how I'm using the side of the brush to create a little more texture and interesting features within the painting. So it could be like catching light or other things. So I'm just diluting a little more light colors, or something reminding us is concrete. So I'm using a little cerulean blue. So adding a little bit of shadow under the boat. I'm just using a little more water. Now I'm gonna just come back and then wash, let the colors bleed. And yellow ochre for a little bit of sand getting into the water. Okay, it's a good time to dry. So after drying, I'm gonna start adding some darker elements to the painting. So it's mainly grays, and at this stage I'm taking some Algerian red and grays. So keeping in mind where the light source is. And I'm fairly keeping it less water or a little more thick, so that I get that accidental gap in the when I'm painting. So a little bit of windows. So a couple of doors, wooden panel doors. You want to be true to architecture, so you want to pick up some highlights which is easy to paint but still makes it feel European, or in this case UK. So those chimneys, those wooden panel doors, boats, grey sky, all those things add to the ambience. So if you notice the chimney blocks, depending on how many houses there are, there's multiple smaller tubes coming in through, or the pipes coming through. So I'm adding a little bit of shadow. Adding another house in the background. Shadow of the roof. Shadow of the roof. Same principle, but just making sure that I'm going house by house and then covering most of the things. Just a lip, couple more poles, or whatever it could be. Adding a little bit of shadow, and I'm gonna go get the boats in. So I'm using ultramarine blue, the rim of the boat or the top of the boat, a little bit of red, same, a little bit of chimney in the backdrop. So I'm going at the people fairly dark, so that one is red, gray, more gray than the red. I'm picking up some more yellow ochre, a little bit of face, and then while it's still wet, could be a blonde hair or a blonde skin tone. Picking up grays. So I'm leaving the shirt a little white. Colors, playing with colors. These are just shapes, but as long as the shape looks something similar to a human, it will work. So at this stage I'm drawing a house in between, and I'm finishing the same touches what I was trying to do. A little bit of lavender. It goes well with either cool colors or warm colors. I tend to use lavender a lot when I'm trying to do something neutral or opaque. And lavender is a really great color. It's opaque and then you can add multiple layers. It's one of the good colors to have on your palette. So adding a little bit of texture. Adding a shadow to the boat. And the people need some shadow as well. I'm just trying to finish a little bit of red, red. I think this is a good place to dry. We are almost getting to the end of the painting. So I'm just working on the couple of 3 houses in the front, so those needs to be worked. There's not much of details. So a little bit of mast. It's always good to go from bottom to top, either coming from top to bottom, because usually the paint or the line wanes as we go up. So if you're drawing a branch or a tree, it's always good to start at the bottom and then finish at the end. So shadow. Okay, so I'm just looking at what needs to be completed. A few bits and bobs sticking out. There might be a shadow from a different house. It's just the foreground looked a little empty, so I'm just adding a little more color to it. So that roof looked too clean or too subtle, so I'm just adding a little bit of colors on the side. And then you see how I use my fingers to create texture. Always don't hesitate to create texture. So a couple of birds, just a small R. Probably risking not overdoing it, so just adding few seagulls, or usually when you go to a seaside there's plenty of birds. Couple of rig lines. Anchor lines, not rig lines, anchor lines. And this is the final dry. Let's reveal the painting, always a fun part. Let's see how it puts the painting in perspective, especially when you get some clean lines. Makes this painting look good. I'm pleased with it. Maybe I should try a slightly bigger painting, just doing the same fashion. Well, this is the completed painting. I hope you enjoyed and tried it with me. So you can see with simple shapes and following my simple technique, drawing first wash, second wash and the third wash, you could get something like this. As you see, there is enough details, but not enough details that you don't have to bog about being very precise. Try it out. If you have any questions, leave a comment below. And if you're new to the channel, hit subscribe and hit that like button. Till next time, keep watercoloring and bye.